Welcome to American Common Sense, a fun look at the state of American politics, inspired by Thomas Paine's Common Sense from 1776, hosted by James Humphreys. Welcome to the first ever podcast of American Common Sense. Question is, do we still have any common sense? We'll find out. This is a fun look at the state of American politics, inspired by Common Sense by Thomas Paine, which is an amazing pamphlet that was the most liberal document of its time, showing that we needed to throw off an evil king. There's a great quote by George Washington that explains what it is we're trying to do here at the American Common Sense podcast. And it is this: in proportion as the structure of government gives force to public opinion, it is essential that the public opinion should be enlightened. It's kind of important. Too many people today, they like to go to parties, Thanksgiving, Christmas, hang out with their families, and they want to talk, and they talk about stuff that matters to them. And politics has kind of become pervasive in almost all of those conversations, and yet we hide from it so much. And we do that because people get really angry. They get angry mostly because they have an opinion. They don't entirely understand why they have that opinion or how to articulate, how to explain that to the people that they're talking with. It's my goal to make sure that we are a little better informed as to how things work, what our founding documents look like, what our founding fathers wanted, so that you can be educated to decide what it is you believe and why, and be able to communicate that to everyone you talk to regularly. I know that sounds terribly boring. We're going to go over a few fun things today that'll be great. And then it'll just get some foundational stuff that works. Most of us went to history class and did basic civics in the United States. Which means we know that there are three basic branches of government. We're going to talk a little bit about those today. And then we got to ask some important questions like, why is the legislative branch being so weak right now? I mean, seriously, can't Congress do their job? I mean, they haven't done their job for decades, but it's really bad right now. And I think everyone kind of feels that in the United States right now, which is why so many of my friends, both inside the U.S. and outside the U.S., keep sending me memes and quotes and other things going, we're with you, we understand, stay strong, it'll only be a few years. It comes from a fundamental lack of understanding about how our form of government works, and we want to make sure we clarify that. So we're going to talk about those things and not people and personalities. I'm not going to tell you whether someone's good or someone's bad or someone's evil or someone's right. I want to talk about what we do and why we do it, and then you can decide if someone is good or bad or evil or not evil based on what you care about. First thing I want to do is pull out this wonderful little thing. It's my little pocket constitution. There are thousands and thousands of them delivered every day all over the country. I recommend everyone in the country have this, whether you're 18 or whether you're 70 or anywhere in between, whether you love politics or hate politics. It's just kind of nice to have sitting in a drawer somewhere so you can refer to it. So when someone says something, you can go, I don't know if that rings true or not. And you get a chance to look and see for yourself what matters. Most of us were taught that there are three branches of government. That's true. There are three branches of government in our Constitution specifically outlined. To be honest, though, with the amendments and everything else we've done, there's actually four branches of government, and we'll do a whole video on that sometime a little bit later on. Three branches of government we all know about. Congress, the legislative branch, made up of two bodies, the House and the Senate. A lot of people, including those in the media, make the mistake of pretending we're a parliament and calling it the upper branch and the lower branch. They are not an upper branch or a lower branch. They are equal bodies in a single branch of government. Second branch of government, of course, is the executive branch. That's the branch of the president. Everyone thinks that's the most powerful branch. It's not. It is a co-equal branch of government. And then the third branch, which most people ignore, except for the last few months, we've had all these crazy lawsuits since the 2024 election cycle, as the executive branch is trying to decide how much power they have or don't have. The courts, the judiciary branch, they handle what they have to do. The way the Constitution lays it out is very specific. The legislative branch, the House and Senate, they decide what all the laws are. That includes how we spend our money. That's the budget. So they write the laws. Our personal representatives that we elect every couple of years, they write the laws. The executive branch's job is to enforce the law as Congress writes it. And whenever there are disputes between what Congress thinks it wrote and what the executive thinks it wrote, or if there's disputes between states or people who are unsure if their rights are being violated, then the judiciary branch interprets that law later on and makes sure that the executive and the legislative branch know what's working and what's not so they can correct it. It's a pretty simple form of government. The last branch, which we hardly hear about, and I'll do a little brief thing about it and we'll talk about it in another video, is the states as a whole. Most people forget that. There is a clause in this little book, the Constitution, called the Supremacy Clause, that says that the states who sign up to become members of the U.S. have to be subservient to the federal Constitution. They can't write or do anything that would break the U.S. Constitution. And so most people think that makes the states subservient. But the states as a collective frequently, at least until the Civil War, would override the federal government. We've seen a lot less of that in the last 100 years or so, but we have a perfect example today. And I'll give it to you real fast, and that is marijuana. So when Colorado and Washington passed medical marijuana during the President Obama's administration, the Obama administration could have sued to try and stop them from doing so because it violated federal law. They didn't. And the consequence was that as multiple states added more medical marijuana, and then states like Oregon and Washington expanded medical marijuana to be recreational use, now virtually every state in the country has some form of marijuana use, which means the federal government has zero chance of ever enforcing federal law. They will at some point be required to capitulate and change the law to accommodate what the states have done. So the states as a collective have a lot of power, which means what you do in your own hometown, talking to your state legislature, especially small states, New Hampshire and Vermont and Utah and Nevada, small states with less people, you have a lot of impact in what you do at the state legislatures. So your voice, no matter how big or small you think it is, can have way more of an impact than people think. We can even change federal policy on something that everyone thought was controversial, like medical marijuana, for example. Now, what I want to point out is a couple things that are important. In this little pocket constitution, there are a whole bunch of sections that explain what we do. What most people don't notice because they haven't read it, hell, half the representatives that I know haven't read this, and they're working for you in DC. And those that have read it, well, they don't know how to follow it. So that's kind of interesting. But there is one section, section 1, that describes the legislative branch of the U.S. government, and it is the largest section of the Constitution. There is an enormous amount of data that tells us what we can and cannot do. The executive branch, the president, where we think all the power's at, the Constitution gives it half as much time as it gives the legislative branch, Congress. And the judicial branch, they get like less than a page. So if you think about what's important, who you elect as representatives makes all the difference in the world. And the Constitution of the United States has the most to say about what those people can and cannot do. Remember, the U.S. is one of the only countries where we actually tell people the government is not the boss. You're the boss. We, the people, are the boss. In fact, the preamble of the Constitution says, we, the people, in order form a more perfect union. We, the people. The government doesn't tell us what we can do. We tell the government what it can do. And too many people in government today forget that. It isn't about them working for us and our tax dollars paying their salaries. No, it's the power that they exercise is power that we decide they get to have. And if we don't like it, we can change it. And we should. We shouldn't give up those rights. So I pay attention to those things. It's kind of a big deal. The reason I mentioned all that as just kind of a breakdown is because I got a real question, which is, why is it Congress isn't doing their job? We all know they're not doing their job. We all know that no one in Congress is really doing their job, but it's more evident today than it has been in years past. And it's been this way for decades. For example, I'll give you an example. Almost every single amendment in this little Constitution book I've got ends with the same phrase. Here's one, section 2 of 15. The Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Here's another one. Here's 19. Oh, section 2. The Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Every single one of these amendments says Congress has the power to enforce it. So why is it that Congress wrote off all of its power to the president? Congress has the sole right to decide how money is spent. So then we have to ask ourselves, well, if Congress has the right to tell us how our money is being spent, and we tell Congress how we want it spent, does the president have any right to change how that money is spent? The answer is no, absolutely not. In fact, not only does he not have the right to do so, but Congress tells him what to spend it on. And if he doesn't spend it that way, he's violating the law, which is when the judiciary has to get involved to tell him what's going on. That's a big deal today because, as we've seen with a number of executive orders that are taking place right now, the president currently is trying to test the limits of what the president can and cannot do. And instead of having a Congress that says, no, this is our job, let us do our job. If you don't like the way this is being done, come to us and we'll see if we can change it. Instead of doing that, Congress has been sheepish in the background, and the Justice Department is having to deal with it. All the judges in the courts, it'll eventually get to the Supreme Court, they're going to have to make those decisions because Congress has been quiet and is not saying, no, this is our job, don't step on our toes. And I'd like to say that this is new, but it's not. Example, if Congress is in charge of money, in fact, one of the very specific things in Section 2 of the first section of the Constitution is that Congress has the right to collect taxes. Well, Congress created the IRS. That means the IRS collects taxes. The IRS is managed by the executive branch. Why are they not reporting directly to the legislative branch who has the right to collect taxes? Why are they reporting to the president instead of to Congress? And that was always the case until Andrew Jackson, who was like the 6th president of the United States, 7th, something like that. But it used to be that all of the executive departments would submit their budgets independent of the president to Congress for Congress's approval because Congress was the one that managed money. Andrew Jackson consolidated that and said the executive branch will provide a single budget for Congress to begin to play with if they wanted to do so. And it is an intercede that made sure that all the departments came to the presidency before they went to Congress. And Congress never said, hey, wait, no, that's our job. And so now we got 150 years, almost 200 years of Congress not doing that part of their job. And people just accept that that's the way that's supposed to be. It's not. I'll give you my personal opinion. I think Congress is too busy trying to get reelected, so they don't want to do anything, which means they want the executive branch to do all their work for them. And if somebody doesn't like it, the courts will fix it for them, so they don't have to do anything except get reelected. Too busy getting reelected to do their job, which is to follow the constitutional mandate that exists in this document. Almost all of the challenges that exist today, whether you like President Trump or don't like President Trump, whether you like Mitch McConnell or don't like Mitch McConnell, whether you like Samuel Alito or don't like Samuel Alito, all boil down to the fact that Congress is choosing to sit on the sidelines and not do their job. We have to hold them accountable to do that. They're the easiest people for us to hold accountable. You and I can't hold President Trump accountable. He's been elected by 50 different states. And people in all those states and all those legislatures can't get to him. But you can get to your U.S. representative in New Hampshire, in Virginia, in Florida, in California. That's how that works. There are 330 million of us. One of us can get to some of them, and we should. They have to know that we are happy or unhappy with what they're doing. We need to encourage them to do their job and stop abdicating their responsibility to the executive branch. By abdicating their responsibility to the executive branch, they make the president more powerful than he is supposed to be. And that's always a problem. That's not how our government is meant to work. We have the coolest form of government ever. I know that sounds weird, it's kind of geeky, but here's the truth. You look at places like Israel or Canada or even Britain, with 1,000 years of democracy in Britain, parliamentary systems collapse all the time when partners of government collapse. We just saw that in Germany. They just had a snap election that replaced their government because the partners in their coalition collapsed. The United States government has never had that happen, ever. Even during the Civil War, we never had that happen. Our form of government can withstand so much corruption without collapse. It's truly amazing. But we all see the corruption that exists today, and it's because people have stopped following this very little document. The more you know about this document, the more you can make sure that your voice is heard to everyone. Little things, not just writing letters or making phone calls, but you can talk to your neighbors. You can talk to your family at dinner. We can elevate the level of discourse in this country and make sure that by just knowing a few little things, that we can make a difference in getting our country back on track. If it's off track, it's our fault. We've elected the wrong people. We're not holding them accountable. This is James Humphreys. I'm with American Common Sense, and I'm hoping that makes some common sense to all of you. And next time, we're going to talk about the fourth branch of government, which is the states, a little bit more effectively, and what it is we need to do to get our state, what can we do personally to get our states to change federal policy. Thanks, and have a great day.